Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. It is January 9th. This is the City of Aspen work session, City Council work session. On our agenda this evening is board and commission interviews, and then we will have a special meeting called to order at around 4:30 or when we get to it for purposes of executive session. So we can go ahead and get started. Let's get right into board interviews, and I'm just going to take them in the order that we have here. So our first one is the Grant Steering Committee, and Judy Clausen is here. Come on up to the table, if you will. Yeah, right there.
Good afternoon.
And if you just, yep, those look green, those are on. Excellent. So this is the Grant Steering Committee, a relatively new committee here in the city, and this is the intention to kind of give guidance, if you will, around the grants that we do in the city. So first I would ask you, you are aware of the meeting schedule and the requirements and responsibilities of the board that you're applying for?
I'm not aware that there is a meeting schedule, but I'm relatively available to attend whatever is scheduled.
All right, and I'm just looking through the bylaws to see if they don't have a set schedule because they call to
Yes.
order when they need to.
Yes.
All right, any questions from council members? Let's start with Rachel.
Well, Judy, thank you for applying. And given your extensive history and resume with the arts, it's a general question, but what do you think you can bring to the board of the Arts Grants Committee?
Well, since I have basically retired, I've been working on the other side of the table, from the fundraising side, which is my usual side of the table. And I've learned a lot about how philosophy is different in different granting organizations. And I've worked for a couple of years on the Snowmass Village Citizens Grant Review Board. I've been the chair for the last couple of years. And I'm on the Thrift Shop Grants Committee, which actually has a substantial amount of money to distribute in the community. They have $400,000 compared to Snowmass Village, which had 125. I think they've gone up to 175,000 this year. So I've thought, and because of my fundraising background, I've thought a lot about grants and applications and the difficulty of applying as a staff person, former staff person, and I have a lot of respect for the process. And I have looked through your website, and I've been impressed with the effort you've made to be transparent to the community about the process, and I like the fact that there are 3 different levels of application, excuse me, depending on the size of the grant application. I have some ideas, of course, but we'll save those for later.
Thank you.
Any others?
No questions, I just have some comments.
If you'd like.
I think this is an extremely good fit. I noticed you were Director of Advancement at the Anderson Ranch since '94, so you've clearly been here a long time, and that's precisely, I think, what we're looking for on our boards. So thank you for applying.
You're very welcome. It would be my honor to serve. If you think my qualifications and experience match what you need, I would be honored to serve.
With your extensive experience, in engagement with other nonprofits, do you anticipate any conflicts of interest in reviewing all the applications?
I do not. I'm not currently employed, nor do I intend to be employed as a fundraiser or a fundraising consultant. So I am free and clear.
Great, thank you. Thank you for applying.
Yeah, question. So thank you for all your service for years in so many ways. I'm curious, with your lens, how you think about the relative value of investing public dollars in, legacy organizations versus new organizations and sort of the spectrum in between.
That's such an interesting question and such a great one, because that is the crux of the matter, isn't it? And also another crux is whether you like to support operating funds or program funds.
Got to my next question.
And I, of course, look to the council for your guidance and your wisdom on how you think taxpayer dollars should be spent. And because these are taxpayer dollars, I mean, that's a terrific responsibility to allocate them appropriately. I think you've made a great contribution to the community by defining your philosophy. And I don't think there's a yes or no answer to your question, Skippy. I mean, it depends, because the legacy organizations bring so much to the community and they offer so much, but yet you want new services, you want innovative ideas, you want to support all those other organizations as best you can.
Yeah. All true. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. No questions from me. I agree. Your qualifications are right up this alley, so this is fantastic. Thank you so much for applying.
It would be my
Appreciate it.
pleasure. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. I would also let council know that on that board, the Grant Steering Commission, we would still be short of a full boat there, so we will need more applications in the future. Now we'll move on to our next opening is with the HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission. We have Kara? Hi, thank you for being here. Obviously, thank you for your service already and reapplying for this. We really appreciate the work of our volunteer boards, and thank you so much for that. You obviously are aware of the schedule and the meeting requirements and the responsibilities, so I don't need to ask that. I just want to ask you, how has the last year or two been for you on the HPC?
You know, I think our meetings during the pandemic were really challenging, just to have open dialogue amongst board members and with the applicants. Obviously, we're dealing with a lot of applications that have physical materials and 3D modeling and all that we prefer to see in person. So I think our whole board is excited to go back, to get back into the swing of things now that we're going back to in-person meetings. I think it's been a challenge that we've had so much turnover on the board since I've been on it, and it seems like we have a really good group right now. Of course, we're always looking for more people, but we've got a diverse opinion base, I would say, on the board, so that's been really exciting to see come together. I think we've finally gotten our bearings as a group, so.
Has there been anything that's come out recently that does the HPC feel like there's somewhere that you'd like to put more energy? Is there some part of historic preservation in the role that you play on the board? Any conversations like that going on at the board level that?
Yeah, I think we'd really like to have some work sessions with City Council to talk about some of these affordable housing projects and how to balance the preservation goals with the affordable housing goals. It's something our board has, as I'm sure you're aware, struggled with over the last several years. So I think, well, I know that a lot of our members would be excited to sit down and talk with you all to make sure we're on the same page, because we are a board appointed by you, and we want to be working towards your goals as well.
Thank you. Others? Questions?
You actually kind of asked what I was going to ask in terms of what do you think might improve the working of the board, or what additional support you might need at the board? But I've already got down work session with council. Are there other things that might smooth the wheels?
You know, I think we've had also some staffing changes. I know that Amy has quite a bit on her plate right now, which is very understandable, but I think it would be great to get someone, you know, dedicated to HPC on the city staff side. So we had been doing some work sessions just as a board, which were really helpful to get some of the newer members up to speed on what it is we do and the differences in HPC guidelines versus commercial core guidelines and all of that. So I think that would be great. I know that's not entirely in your court, but that's
Okay.
the other thing that I think would help us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Carl, for your service, and I think level head and good keel and rudder and any other metaphors I can think of for sailing. So from what I hear, that you've gone to all in-person meetings?
Yeah.
That there's no more this and that?
We found it was confusing for applicants. We like to have the flexibility of the virtual meetings for the board members, just because, it gives us a little bit more ability to call in if we're working remotely. But I think it's better for applicants to have the consistency. So, yeah.
And your question I had here, I think you addressed it, was the staff relations, that you're looking for a permanent person from staff to be assigned to HPC.
Yeah, which is I know that's what their goal is. I think it's just been challenging with the turnover that they've seen. Yeah,
Thank you.
of course.
And I look
Thank you,
forward
Ward.
to a work session. It's been a few years since we've been together.
Yeah, it would be exciting.
Skippy?
Yeah, I'll let you preview the work session. I'm always curious, having sat on these boards or these types of boards, is there I guess if you were 5 votes at this table, is there a policy or a zoning change that you would recommend or you would like to see that you think would yield better projects?
Oh, that's tough. Oh, goodness. I wouldn't say that there's any zoning changes. I know Ben's sitting back here, and I was involved quite a bit with Ben in discussions when you guys were doing the code changes that recently were implemented. And I think a lot of those were really great steps. To move forward, I think one of the things we see on our board is it takes years to actually see the impact of those changes. We won't see what your most recent code changes did for 5 to 7 years. So I think at this point in time, we need to implement what's going on. I'm not a huge proponent of making so many changes so fast, just because of how long projects take to build in this town. So I think right now we've made some changes, and I just really want to see how they pan out. And then it would be great to have a retrospective. We've changed the guidelines, the HPC guidelines. I can't remember. Amy would know better when we changed them, maybe 5 or 7 years ago, to do a look back on, the projects we've approved in these last 5 years under those newer guidelines and compare them to what the guidelines were before, just to measure the progress a bit. That would be, I think, an interesting project to look at.
Thanks.
Yeah.
John?
I fully support your serving more, Kara serving more.
Thank you.
4 years already on the board. She knows how it works. And yeah, in the right profession for this, I believe, too.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Kara,
service.
thank you so much for coming in.
Of course.
Good to see you.
You too.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
And the next one up on our list is the Wheeler Opera House. And we have one opening. We have Dr. Tom Kurt is here, if you want to come on up, as well as Bob Eflin is here as well. Come on up to the table, have a quick conversation. Dr. Kurt is reapplying for his position. Bob, I guess I'll just ask the question that I always ask, is just about knowing the roles and responsibilities and the meeting times, and if there's any conflict there for you.
I've only seen the meeting times for the next couple of months. Those are all fine.
Great.
I don't know if we've got a schedule out beyond that, but I think that's pretty reasonable. They seem to be at least once a month,
Yes.
late afternoons, so that all sounds good.
Yes, Wednesdays at 3 o'clock, once a month. Thank you for that. And can you maybe start the conversation? What spurred your interest to apply for the Wheeler board?
Sure, sure. Well, I'm certainly not as longstanding a resident as Tom, but I've been coming to Aspen for 35 some odd years. Lived here about 5 years ago, left to chase a job down to Tennessee, and just recently returned to the Valley. So I'm living down in Basalt right now. I've got kind of a mixed background, but hopefully one that I think would be of value here. So I've run a similar enterprise in Atlanta for almost 8 years. It was for profit. It wasn't a non-for-profit theater, but was able to turn that around fairly significantly, develop a bit of a national reputation. We had a nationally syndicated radio show. We had a television show. Very proud of it. But also a background in business consulting. I've got some work in corporate IT, kind of senior level roles there as well. So kind of a mixed bag of experiences and talents to hopefully bring to the table. Have loved the Wheeler since the first time I was ever in it. I volunteered there for some of your Christmas Eve shows over the years, and have worked with some of the acts that have performed there over the years. So I've managed a band. We've had a recording studio and things back in Atlanta. So again, kind of understand the historical significance of the space, and but also one of the things that I enjoyed when I was in the music business in Atlanta was tying our business tightly in with the community. And I see that as a real benefit of the Wheeler, and I'm kind of curious really to get your all's feedback as to how that's going, and just looking at the event calendar, are you happy with the utilization of the space right now? So I feel like I can bring some things to this from a content standpoint, from an operational standpoint, things like choosing and installing sound systems and lighting systems and booking. Those are all things that I've had experience with. So anyway, I love the space, and whether it's on the board or some other way, hopefully there's a way to contribute.
Thank you for that. Dr. Kurt, welcome back. Thank you. In front of us. You, let's see, what did it say? 4 terms? Have you served 4?
4 terms.
Yeah. So thank you for your service. You're reapplying. I think I know the answer. You have a passion for the Wheeler. You've been an usher there forever, and your service on the board. But is there anything in particular that you are coming back to the board thinking, boy, I'd love to see maybe it move in this direction, that direction? Or is there anything particular that that is piquing your interest for reapplying?
Well, first, I wholly support our new director, Lisa Rigby-Peterson. I think she's outstanding. She's a Coloradan. She went to CU. She understands the Front Range. She's in New York now at an Association for Arts meeting. I'm up to date with the meeting that we're going to have on this Wednesday, hopefully with my being there. But at the same time, I'm a bit remiss that we have the Wheeler lots next door. If you recall Richie Cohen, and I support Richie Cohen's idea of putting some kind of structure on those Wheeler lots. We had 3 options before that came to us with the theater producers consultants when they came about 3 years ago. Do nothing with the lots before next door, spend $13.9 million to put in a 1-story building with a basement, or spend $30 million by putting in a 3-story building. I think something needs to be begun in those lots. Ed Berkeley, the longtime opera director, wanted rehearsal rooms. We really need more offices, and I think we need, in the memory of Richie Cohen, a kind of black box theater where local small groups can put on performances where they wouldn't need all of the Wheeler space. So that's my dedication to see something next door. I'm also dedicated to see the arts grants that are coming about be implemented. I've suggested use of a 3-year moving average because the Wheeler income, from the red fluctuates like a roller coaster from year to year. So we need a kind of a leveling out and a kind of an experience in implementing the arts grants. I would like to see that occur. So you know that I've been an usher there for about 20 years at this point. I know every part of that building. I've been on the roof. I've been in the old ceiling charred with fire from the 1912 fire, et cetera. I know that building, and I know the people that work on the inner parts. I've been in every room in that building. And I want to see the Wheeler carry on the spirit of Aspen. I've not lived in Aspen since 1949, but I traveled here with my parents in 1949. And I can remember Main Street was paved. And we drove over Independence Pass, which was a gravel road. And I've seen the increments of that over the years. And I want that kind of flavor of the Aspen history preserved in what we present at the Wheeler.
Thank you. Open it up. Start with Skippy.
Bob, I'm curious, your experience elsewhere is great, but I'm wondering how much experience you have in the Wheeler at programming. You asked us a question about sort of the makeup of programming and how it meets and integrates, and I wonder if you have an opinion about that from experience yet.
Well, Lisa Rigby Peterson has our implementation performed in-house. It's not outsourced at the present time. And so I wholeheartedly support that return to the kind of arts groups that she's bringing in, very broad-based. And I'd like to see that continue on to the fullest of her abilities.
Thanks, Tom. Bob?
Yeah, I've not had a chance to sit down with her. And you may already know this, but I applied for Gina's position when she had it before several years ago, and worked with Randy and some of the other folks at City Hall on that. It's interesting, the space itself, there are things about it that confuse me, to be honest with you, and I look forward to, as a volunteer or as a board member, to try and understand that better. I mean, obviously, we've got a lot of issues with our clientele moving further and further down Valley, and will they come back in the evenings for shows? Are you just booking for tourists, and doing kind of what, they're doing at some of the other private venues in town and high dollar max kind of a thing. And if we really want to integrate kind of that community involvement, I think we've really got to have a strong plan for how to do that with the fact that the demographics are changing a little bit. The booking calendar, at least for the 3 months that I was reviewing earlier today, I think it's about 10 nights a month. I guess I would have expected a little higher utilization of the space, and maybe not everything's on the calendar, so I don't want to misjudge that. But it's a space that I think has so much possibility, not only for booking acts, but for local community engagement, that it seems like it should be utilized at a higher rate. Based on what I've seen both at the club level and at the theater level, it's a pretty significant staff size for the number of shows that we're doing, so I would really like to understand that better, especially given all the volunteers that the Wheeler utilizes. And the budget, again, is just something I know I looked at in depth when I was applying for the executive director position years ago. But, we outsourced the bar, it looks like. There doesn't appear to be any synergies with the restaurant downstairs in terms of food and beverage. So I'm a little confused why it's not a little more self-sufficient financially. Certainly the capital improvements stuff makes all the sense in the world to be a community-funded thing, but in terms of just the ongoing expense budget, just look forward to understanding that better, because it's not aligned with my experience. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. I'm not trying to be critical, because I really I haven't talked to them in depth about
I
it.
appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Rachel?
I have more of an observation than a question for either of you, because I think you're both very well-qualified candidates for this. The Wheeler seems to get the most citizen interest for serving on the board than any other board that I've seen over time. And it's one of our only boards that you don't have to be an Aspen resident to participate, which is a good thing. And it's always awkward feeling that you're turning so many good people and good ideas away when you have limited number of seats. And it's hard to ever talk to someone who has served very faithfully and they're just reapplying and you really haven't done anything wrong. But there's always the desire for how do you get new ideas and new blood and new thinking. And, it was one of our former interviews maybe a couple years ago or so, and I think it was pandemic time. And we heard some really creative ideas from some of the applicants, some of the young people, saying things like, why don't we start having a broadcast studio in the Wheeler to broadcast live music shows, even if it's, like the guitar shop in Carbondale. Sure. Why don't we do more things that are more creative than just bringing in shows per se? And I can't recreate the dialogue then, but it was a lot of neat things thought about. And so what I've really thought about is, it seems to me I'd love to see the Wheeler board maybe twice a year hosting an ideas open house, or inviting people to come in and talk to them about how to use it better, or what they'd like to see, or just some form of outreach. That the meetings are open to the public and the Wheeler board members are available through the community, but sometimes you have to give people a little more of an actual invite that I'd like to hear your ideas, and we're going to have, these days, and have some crumpets and tea up on the second floor. Anybody can stop by at 5 to 6 o'clock or whatever. But I think that would be part of the integrating the Wheeler more into the community, so that the Wheeler board itself is better known in the community, and have times when they're a listening board to what else we could bring in. And you'll hear a lot of fantastical ideas that won't work, but you might have a few glimmers of others, and have people have that sense of greater involvement in the Wheeler itself. So that's really the only thing I would have to offer at this point for whoever we end up appointing. And appreciate both of your service and your interest.
Well, if I could add, certainly in the marketing area, I'm aware that they're making a bigger investment in digital marketing, social media, and I think that's going to be a key element of their success. Mm-hmm. And so I look forward to kind of understanding what they're doing and seeing if there's a way that certainly we can provide some good guidance on that front. Mm-hmm. But also, I think when you talk about the community, it's being clear what that community is. Mm-hmm. And again, as more and more people move down Valley, I live in Basalt now. I think that it's engaging that entire community, whether it's the transient tourist kind of community, or whether it's the folks that work here during the day and head back down Valley in the evenings. And maybe that space can be used better, for example, during the day, while a lot of people up here in the Valley, as opposed to just evening performances. So things like that, I think, that are going to be important as they chart kind of the next decade.
Good observations. Tom?
I wholeheartedly support what you say. And I would like to see the Wheeler be more of a leader of arts in the community. Like we have on the Wheeler board, a representative from the music festival. It goes back to 1984, when the music festival donated money for the rehab of the Wheeler. I would like to see a similar representative from the Wheeler or from the arts group or from the city to the ISIS. Mm-hmm. Aspen Film has taken over the ISIS, and I think the city needs some representative, because there are theaters there that at times the Wheeler might like to use for a sub-theater. And I'd like to see the city have some representative on the Aspen film and some input at times using those. Another thing that I've been for through the years is a fellowship program, so that in the summer at least there's an intern or fellow that works with the Wheeler and perhaps rotates to the music festival and theater Aspen for input and experience in theater management. And of course, you know I'm on the Board of Health.
Yeah.
And I've been very helpful to the Wheeler through the whole COVID crisis. Anytime something happens, I instantly forward that to or give that with input to Lisa Rigby Peterson, and that's worked out very well. As you know, the Wheelers had programs where we've tested people or required to show their immunization before they go in the theater, and I think it was one of the foremost arts places in the community to do that. So I would expect to continue that kind of liaison.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Board, questions, comments?
Bob, I seem to recall you've applied for a Wheeler board spot previously. Is that true?
I don't think so. I was with the Wheeler Associates for a while, and I applied to be, when Gina was hired a number of years ago.
Okay,
I've certainly not gone through an interview process for a board position here.
Yeah, there was somebody with Atlanta connections that I recall in the past.
Yeah.
But I have an imperfect memory. It's really good, but it's short.
No worries.
And, I appreciate some of Rachel's comments about new ideas with new people. Certainly appreciate, Tom, with all of your service for so long. And I find it too bad that we have only one opening right now and 2 more positions in July with people that have been on the board a long time as well.
And just to be clear, I'm not looking to unseat an existing board. I actually didn't know Tom was looking to be re-upped until after I had applied. So
Perhaps we need another alternate.
Well, there's, I think
I'm just looking for an opportunity to contribute, and it's an aspect of our community that I've just always appreciated, and hopefully that I can add some value to.
yeah, and
Alternates can step in and vote, when members don't attend.
well, alternates have as much weight, I think, as the full voting members. Everybody listens to the alternates when they speak up, and it is a public meeting, and I think any voices that could add to the conversation would be welcome. So I appreciate both of your backgrounds, and the CV that Tom provided us is perhaps the longest I've ever seen.
It's impressive, isn't it?
Thank you.
John?
I'm grateful that we have 2 qualified candidates to apply for one position, and I'm hoping it'll work out that, Bob, if you're open to it, you'll fill a position next summer when it becomes available, or can join as an alternate now if that's what we can make happen.
Thanks,
Right.
John. Okay.
And congratulations on all 54 14ers, Dr. Kurt.
Thank you.
Well done.
Perhaps a bit crazy, but I'm doing it.
Well, you were one of
what
the
we like.
pioneers, it turns out, because now everybody's doing it.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate your applications. We'll let you know soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And then, guys, we unscheduled, we have one more, and that's the one that I handed you a paper copy of application. This is an abbreviated application because when you print it out like that, if you'll notice, some of these are drop-down files, so they lead to other questions and such. But Maza, if you come on up to the table, that'd be great. Marianne Maza Pitt.
Hi, how are you?
So Maza contacted me last week and was really asking, hey, how can I get involved? I want to do something, volunteer for the city. what are my opportunities? And I said, well, we are having these interviews, but the packet deadline is closed already. So knowing that we try not to have these just open pending, and then we might not have any more interviews for another couple months, I said, hey, come on down, let's meet you and let's talk. So we're gonna squeeze her in here. She did choose planning and zoning, knowing that we have some openings there, and it's also, somewhat up her alley of occupation. She's working as a broker for Engel and Volkers. Anyway, so I invited her in. I asked a couple of you if that was okay with you, and you said that was all right. So she is here. We don't have information about P&Z in front of us right now. Have you looked at P&Z, the roles, responsibilities, the meeting dates, and things like that, and there's no conflict there for you?
Yeah, that would be, I'd be able to meet with, the board at those times. It looks like it's the first and third Tuesdays at 4:30 via Zoom as of current. Maybe it'll go back to person.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
No problems.
And, I think for a lot of us, we try to make a good mix. This is a 9-person board when it's full, and that gives us the opportunity to have people that are both in the industry that surrounds planning and zoning items and issues, but also some that aren't. You would be on the real estate side of this, which sometimes is great because you have kind of some of the technical knowledge and background, but also can have those opportunities for conflict or, personal interest that can be part of these. So first and foremost, I'd just like to ask you about that. Applying for planning and zoning when you're in the industry like you are, how do you feel about that kind of conflict? Do you think that there is a conflict inherent in that?
Great question, Tori. So currently I'm actually inactive. That was something that I've prior done, and I've taken a backseat a little bit to working in the real estate industry. And so as of the moment, there would not be a conflict of interest. But I do, feel that, my background and knowledge has spanned, even before that. I've been sitting in kind of board meetings with my father and his company since I was 12 years old, predominantly down in South Florida. And so, yeah, I have a bit of experience. I've also, assisted with making decisions for the board for his companies, and as well as, learning about just even the overall planning and zoning. In Florida, obviously, it's a little bit of an upcoming, location where the places that he was looking into, they were brand new. It was basically just total land. Obviously, Aspen, we have been built up for many years here, and so there is a lot of moratorium and rules and regulations on, the ability to. There is really nowhere else to be building truly, except for what's already there, and that's also where, a lot of the zoning laws and regulations come into extensive play, whether it's commercial, which I have also background in doing commercial, deals, and also residential, and then, manufacturing and things like, I know the airport is also under some potential changes upcoming, and there's a lot of talk around that as well as to, do we need to reconfigure the whole airport itself and the direction and the flow of traffic in and out of Aspen. And so there are a multitude of topics at hand. And, I think also the symbiosis of obviously part of the P&Z is to kind of come with, in front of you all and confer and, try and come up with the best creative, futuristic ideas, thinking of environmental things as well, even down to, where we're putting parking spaces for electric vehicles and such, to, the flow of traffic, the bus lanes and things of that nature as well. So I think that there is a huge kind of topic at play here.
Thank you for that. I'll open it up to others. Rachel, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, thank you for applying and coming in. And because we have this kind of abbreviated form, I'm going to ask you a couple questions that might have been on the, how long have you lived in Aspen?
Sure. I've lived in Aspen for 8 years.
8 years. Okay, thank you very much. And who's your employer currently?
So I'm currently doing some sort of, part-time kind of work. I've been helping out with Gucci in town, which is obviously, retail, but I also assist with the boys freshman basketball team for Aspen High School as well. So I can't get there all the time, but when I can, it's a good way to also give back and, to really get to know a lot of people in the area.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And,
Sure.
you referenced the moratorium, and the past year has been a lot of work on code and some of the issues. So I have a few questions along those lines, but have you read the Aspen Area Community Plan?
So I've dabbled in different versions of it, but I haven't read the entire thing entirely. So that would be something that I would be, more inclined to obviously, run through specifically.
Okay, and some of the outcomes of our work this past summer was to limit the number of demolitions that may occur each year to a number of 6 plus 1 for longer-term residents who to avoid that competition level. How do you feel about that?
Sure. Overall, I think that it's always important to integrate, to think about, I guess, the whole holistic picture of, what are the reasons behind that? I know that there were a lot of things going on, from traffic coming from down valley in terms of construction workers daily. Most of them are driving on their own solely because they're bringing all their tools.
But do you think it's something that should be reversed, increased, or do you support it?
I would suggest, and I'm always open to interpretation and to hear, other ideas, but I think that maybe it should be reversed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the short-term regulations that were recently passed, and then the community voted on the potential taxes on those. It's designed so that within the residential, not the lodging neighborhoods,
Sure.
will eventually decrease in number through attrition to reduce by about 25% of the numbers of short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods now. Is that also something you would agree with or disagree with or would like to see modified?
Sure, and I'm always open to modification. On that side, I can certainly understand, people kind of just transparently just coming and going consistently. And, when you do have full-time year-round residences, especially amongst a single building, and then you do have, people in just for the weekend and that sort of instance, I understand people's argument, for obviously wanting that income, but I also can understand, the 4-day minimums and, the extra rules and regulations going on that side as well. So I don't think that it's a terrible thing. I also like my peace and quiet, truly, at home especially. And, even in where I've lived, I've noticed, sometimes there are people that come and go consistently, and it can create, disruption, we'll say.
So you think it's appropriate to limit the number of STRs in residential neighborhoods and perhaps see them reduced from today's levels?
I agree with what has happened thus far, and like was stated previously in an earlier board meeting, everything sometimes does take time as well to see, the ripple effect. Mm-hmm. And so for today, I like it, but let's say in 2 years from now, maybe it stops working for whatever reason. This town is very much based upon our tourism, our amount of snowfall annually as well, which it drives our businesses. And businesses here thrive when we do have people coming from other places. And, we were more fortunate than I think a lot of places places in the country and in the world who are dealing with a lot of issues currently as to, people are in financial fears in a lot of areas of the country. And in Aspen, we're sort of in our bubble on some level and accord, right?
Yeah.
But, we also need to be understanding that we are a tourist space as well. And I mean, obviously there's tons of hotels that people can utilize if they're coming for a short stint. But maybe they need a longer term rental here and there, for 30 days or plus if they have an extended family coming or a business group, which also, helps create a lot of, financial gain for where we live. So I think that at the moment it works, and, we just kind of need to keep checking in and seeing what happens and what is the ripple effect down the track. But for today, I'm okay with what it is.
Okay, and one last question. Thanks for your patience. Do you support the urban growth boundary?
Yes, we are very much outside, outdoors, naturistic at our core, and so I think when you start to build like extensive height or extensively outside of your, area, and you're impacting the nature, the wildlife that is in existence as well, I feel that, creates some sort of turmoil, especially given that we are Colorado itself, Aspen itself, the counties in and surrounding our city. It's important. People come here because they love the outdoor experience, and as do I. So, thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'll keep it brief. We got a bunch there. I guess I'm just curious, to your point, we're sort of, none of us are going to know what the outcome of all the changes in the moratorium are for some time in real terms, but you've been here to sort of see what's happened over the last 8 years at least, and I'm curious, in the residential area, how have you viewed the trends of redevelopment? Have they been positive, negative, and for what reason?
For the residential side, in terms of redevelopment, could you elaborate specifically what exactly you're asking?
As structures in residential zone districts get torn down and replaced in the last, 8 years, what they're replaced with, do you see those as improvements or, you can use your own words, but
Sure.
How do you think those changes have affected the community?
Sure. I would say fairly positive. I had worked for when it used to be B2 Builders, Bowdoin Properties, and Aspen Design, Interior Design on Main Street. And that actually was a really interesting job because I got to see all the areas, not only the buying and selling and, leasing and that sort of thing, but I also saw the building. I saw, the interior design element. And those are obviously the very impactful elements of our community, and big drivers. And so I do think that change is always good, for the most part. It's inevitable, right? The only constant is that things will constantly be changing. That's the first and foremost. And I think if we resist that too much, whatever we resist persists, truly. And generally there will be a negative outcome of that. So when we're building, obviously we keep changing laws and zones and things of that nature. And even in terms of, how far deep you can dig, with the basketball court having been built some years ago and saying, okay, that's enough. Like, we can't continue to keep building so far down underground for a numerous amount of reasons, safety and otherwise. But I think that the building is generally helpful and necessary. A lot of people are investors. They're not necessarily full-time home owners that live here. And everybody has a different idea when they're buying or selling or leasing or renting a space. And, a lot of people that I've seen, they're going to buy something with the idea and conception that probably within a decade, they will probably sell that, and then potentially buy something else or go elsewhere or do whatever with their funds and their money. But in saying that 10-year span, more or less, people usually want to renovate. They want to make it home. They want to make it their own in that short run. And I feel it's imperative and essential, to keep all the businesses thriving within the state, the city, the town, but also the country. It's like you're also bringing in all these resources, to be building or renovating, from lumber to, there's quite a substantial amount. And so you're not only impacting necessarily what's going on right here, but you're also impacting other places within the country or Canada as well, where we do, receive a lot of our wood and lumber as well.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
Thank you.
John?
I really have no questions. Thanks for applying. I think Rachel and Skippy did a great job with their questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, you have some experience in development with Bowdoin in and out, in interior and exterior. But you're no longer actively involved in the real estate business?
Within town, I am not. So I still, with my father's property in Florida, I do assist with, making changes in that predominantly. So not within the town. However, it is of interest to me, and this town thrives on, the real estate markets. Potentially, it would be something I may or may not go back into eventually, but at the moment, I have different sites in my vision.
What is your balance between growth and sustainability? I've heard you talking about building is necessary to the economy and that change is inevitable, and resistance leads to negative outcomes. So I'm curious what your balance between growth and sustainability.
Sure. I would say I would waver just a little bit over, probably 55% more sustainability, and, maybe more 45% on, I guess, the growth element as well. When I say growth, I'm not necessarily saying build taller or build wider. I'm saying that there's a lot of construction that's going to go on in terms of like taking something that's already in existence and then redeveloping it. I also do appreciate, the preservation of history. Obviously, Aspen has a lot of that, and I do love that even with the old Victorians and things like that, that there are pretty substantial rules already in place when it comes to if it is an old Victorian in terms of what has to be done or moving the location of that to preserve, the roots of what Aspen has been. And on the sustainability side, this town thrives on sustainability. I mean, we have some of the best minds, ideas, things that come through our town on a regular annual basis, as you're all aware, that all we're trying to do is to kind of continue and keep things as environmentally friendly as possible. And I do support, environmentalism heavily.
What is your balance between tourism and development and real estate?
That's a great question. So, tourism it's in existence. It is basically what runs and rules a lot of this town. However, this is a friendly community as well. And, I enjoy the fact that it is a community. That's one of the main reasons that I love Aspen, is that I feel at home here, and at peace. And I believe that, we need a bit of a balance. Obviously, we have our bipolar seasons where everybody's here all of a sudden and then everybody kind of leaves, for a couple months of the year. And there is somewhat of that, yin and yang going on, so to speak.
Do you think that zoning plays a part in providing workforce housing?
Yes, so zoning does have quite a large impact, I would suggest, in a lot of arenas, not only in, employee housing, but I mean, also how much commercialism versus residential. And so, yeah, there's certainly impacts in that region as well. And, it seems like the town is trying to find what actually works, what actually makes sense. Obviously Centennial's being taken away in another 4+ years, and there will be impacts and ripples of that solely, but there's also new building happening. I guess second and third Burlingame phases happening, and so there's a constant flux happening. There's also been other places within town that have been newly implemented in the last 2 to 3 years. So there's constantly this, let's see what we can do to make all the pieces fit like a perfect puzzle, which it may or may not. To somebody's earlier point, a lot of people do end up moving down Valley as well. A lot of my friends have moved down Valley for many reasons.
Financial reasons.
Yes. So, yeah, there's always that. Where's this balance? And also with COVID happening, many people from out of state moved here doing their jobs virtually as well, which we'll see they may go back home eventually if more people expect them in office.
Yeah, there've been trends on how long people stay and what tourism is that vacillate a bit. I'm going to ask one final question. Is Aspen a community or a commodity?
Aspen's a community.
Do you feel that there's a place for it to be a commodity?
What predominantly are you looking for with a
Well,
commodity?
you said that you think that growth is 45% and sustainability is 55%. Would you put those same kind of balance values on community and commodity, or?
I don't think that they actually overlap. I actually think that they're two separate entities. A community is a place where people gather, join, experience, ski, and go to the Wheeler and do all sorts of activities. And commodity, I think, is going to impact things however it may. However, commodity is essentially, maybe even the outcomes of the community experiences.
Marianne, thank you for your willingness to serve. I'm not sure how many spaces are available on P&Z. So I'm not sure that we're in a position right now to have appointing somebody without having it before us. But I appreciate your willingness to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ward. Thank you all.
Thanks, Maza.
Thanks, Tori.
Thanks for making time to come in. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Very much. Okay.
All right, that is our last interview for boards and commissions. That is our work session for today. But now we need to transition over to our special meeting.
How about those Chiefs?
All right. This is a call to order for the Aspen City Council special meeting, January 9th, 2023. Could we have a roll call for attendance, please?
Counselor Doyle.
Here.
Counselor Howenstein.
Here.
Counselor Mesereau.
Present.
Counselor Richard.
Here.
Mayor Tory.
And here as well. With a special meeting, it is an opportunity for members of the public to make public comments, so I'll go ahead and open up the public comment portion of our agenda. Are there any members of the public that wish to address council this evening? Seeing none in the room, I'll also be looking online. And seeing none online, I'll bring it back to council table. Jim?
Mr. Mayor, council, staff's requesting that council go into executive session.
Thank you.
It's been so long.
Right?
I'll start over. Mayor, council, staff is recommending that council go into executive session pursuant to CRS Section 246402-4A, purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of any real, personal, or other property interest. For B, conferences with an attorney for the local public body for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions. And for E, determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiation, and instructing negotiators. The specific items of discussion tonight involve the following. I propose to give council a report on ongoing litigation. That litigation that is currently active includes the Centennial Owners Association versus City of Aspen, Frontier LLC versus 777 Gibson LLC in the City of Aspen, DR 24F16 LLC versus City of Aspen, Forest Lookout 2 LLC, and Aspen Forest 8th Street LLC versus City of Aspen, Burlingame Ranch 2 versus City of Aspen, Aspen Board of Realtors versus City of Aspen versus Trevor Lindbergh and Mountain Roll-Offs, Inc., KDR Trust versus City of Aspen, and 308 North First LLC versus City of Aspen, as well as Bryce Johnson et al. Versus City of Aspen, and Survivors Trust created under the Campbell Family Trust dated July 13, 1993 versus City of Aspen. Also, I would propose to discuss potential litigation, including that involving the property at 1235 Mountain View Drive. And also propose to discuss the lease, transfer, or acquisition of real property, property interest, contract negotiations, and communication with council regarding such subjects. However, due to market forces, negotiation strategies, and confidentiality demands of parties involved and necessitated by the subject of the specific legal advice, which further disclosure would be a detriment to the city's strategic position, the exact properties cannot be disclosed. I'd also propose providing legal advice regarding the 1994 settlement agreement in Centennial Aspen 2 Limited Partnership, United States District Court Civil Action Number 92B2570. The case was against the City of Aspen, Pickens County, and APJA. Finally, we would like to discuss lease negotiations for the restaurant space at 455 Rio Grande Place, the old Taster's property. If council votes to go into executive session, the executive session will be recorded. The recording will be maintained by the clerk for a period of not less than 90 days. As usual, we recommend that we convene the executive session downstairs in council chambers, and we will not return here to adjourn the council meeting. We will take action downstairs for the coming out of executive session and adjourning this meeting.
I would move to go into executive session per the citations of our city attorney.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote for executive session, please?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Mesereau?
Yes.
Counselor Richards?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. All right. Thank you so much to GrassRoots. We will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m.